what's the core, the essence of discipleship? And I set out to study that and studied through all the New Testament, read it through, asking that question, what's it saying about discipleship? And it turns out that what I concluded was the core of discipleship, wouldn't you know, it's the one thing that gets in my way the most. Now, I'm just going to share some initial thoughts. I've got all these notes, and I'm thinking, okay, do I write a book? Do I do a sermon series? Do I give it all to your pastor so he can do something with it? I don't know, since he's in a writing mood right now with his D-Man project. But let me share some initial thoughts first. And you're going to realize, you're going to notice, this is tough. This is hard. And this is completely counter-cultural. It is going to go against your human nature. It's going to go against modern contemporary cultural worldview, and it's going to go against pretty much everything you hear from culture, young people especially. It's going to go different, contrary to most of what you're hearing. Now let me mention to you Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and some of you may have heard about him. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, he wrote several books. One is called The Cost of Discipleship. He was a Protestant Lutheran minister in Germany during World War II, stood up to Hitler, was a peaceful man, but eventually got involved in kind of on the periphery of an assassination attempt on Hitler's life. He came to the conclusion, as probably many of us would, is, it's not good to kill anybody, but if I have to get involved in killing one person in order to save millions of others, I'll do it. And he was arrested along with many others, because obviously that plot failed, and ended up being, he was hung, he was executed in prison 2 weeks before the war was over, before the camp was liberated by the Allies. But he wrote a lot. He wrote a lot while he was in prison. And I'm going to read you kind of a long quote here to kind of set up where we're going to go. He said, "The cross is laid on every Christian.
Oh, yeah.
The first Christ's suffering which every man or woman must experience is the call to abandon the attachments of this world. It is that dying of the old man which is the result of his encounter with Christ. As we embark upon discipleship, we surrender ourselves to Christ in union with his death. We give over our lives to death. Thus it begins. The cross is not the terrible end to an otherwise God-fearing and happy life, but it meets us at the beginning of our communion with Christ."
Oh, yeah.
Here's the key phrase. When Christ calls a man or a woman, he bids him come and die. It may be a death like that of the first disciples who had to leave home and work to follow him. It may be a death like Luther's who had to leave the monastery and go out into the world. But it is the same death every time.
Oh, yeah.
Death in Jesus Christ. The death of the old man at his call. The death to self. Now, where did Bonhoeffer get such a crazy, radical idea? Well, let's read. Luke chapter 9, beginning with verse 18. I'm going to kind of set it up here. "Now it happened that as he was praying alone, the disciples were with him, and he asked them, 'Who do the people say that I am?' And they answered, 'John the Baptist, but others say Elijah, and others that one of the old prophets of old has risen.' Then he said to them, 'But who do you say that I am?' And Peter answered, 'The Christ, or the Messiah of God.' And he strictly charged and commanded them to tell this to no one, saying, 'The Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed and on the third day be raised.' And he said to all, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. For what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits himself or loses his soul? You are the Christ of God, the Messiah of God. Now there's a direct, compelling, unavoidable statement of fact here that actually carries a force of command. He says, if anyone would come after me, if any one of you wants to be my disciple, deny yourself, take up your cross daily, and then follow me. Now I want you to notice several things here first. This follows the words Jesus just spoke about his own upcoming sacrifice. He said, who do the crowds say that I am? And he strictly charges them to saying the Son of Man must suffer many things, be rejected by the elders, going to be killed, and on the third day is going to be raised. He says, I'm going to do this for you, my disciples. But it doesn't stop there. He says, you too are to deny yourself. Be crucified even daily, every moment, all the time, and follow me and follow my example. Well, Jesus Christ is our Savior, yes.
Yes, sir.
We can believe in Him and trust in Him, and as some people say kind of crassly, we can punch our ticket for salvation. We can punch our ticket for heaven. But He's also our Lord.
Oh, yeah.
And you know what Lord means?
Oh, yeah.
He's the ruler.
Yes, sir.
He's the boss. He's the owner. He's in charge. He's the boss.
Yes, sir.
That is, He owns our lives.
Yes, sir.
Daily.
Come on.
Every moment. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but what should that look like? If He owns my life, what does that mean for me? What should my life look like? Well, it should look like Him.
Come on now.
He's our example. Now, He's much more than our example. Sometimes you hear people like, I'm going to follow the teachings of Jesus because He's our example. And the answer to that is amen. But He's more than our example, but He's at least our example.
Come on now.
He is our example. Well, it follows the words, and then it also precedes the words Jesus spoke about His second coming. He says, you're going to come back again. He says, I'm going to die. I'm going to be rejected. I'm going to be raised on the third day.
Oh, yeah.
And then he goes on and talks about, but I tell you, he goes on and talks about a little bit more here. We didn't read. He says, whoever is going to lose his life, but he said, whosoever is ashamed of me and my words, of him will the Son of Man be ashamed when He comes in His glory, and the glory of the Father and the holy angels. But I tell you truly, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the kingdom of God.
Come on now.
So He says this whole thing about denying yourself. It follows His words about sacrifice, what He's going to do. And then it precedes the words that He says about His second coming. And you notice here, when He talks about His second coming, there's a shame to be avoided. And the way to avoid that shame is to lose our lives daily. To live for His sake. To be dependent on Him. To be proud of Him in the right word. Use of that word. To be proud of Him and glory in Him and His words and His work. That is, as Paul would say, we can boast. We don't like braggarts, do we?
That's right.
But we can brag when we're bragging about Him.
Oh, yeah.
And who He is.
Oh, yeah.
And what He's done for
Say
us.
that. Say that.
1 John 2:28, talking about the shame of when He comes. 1 John 2:28 says, and now, little children, abide in Him, live in Him. Let Him be your life, so that when He comes we may have confidence and not shrink from Him in shame at His coming. Now think about it. Live in Him, walk in Him, walk in the Spirit, so that you're not ashamed. Now it doesn't say that you're going to lose your salvation. It doesn't say that you're not saved. But there is something there about even as believers, as children, He may return and we may go, why? I didn't live my life like I should have. Now, it's not that you're going to lose your salvation because you didn't work good enough. No, it's not saying that. But there is a sense, right there in that 1 John passage, that He may come and we may go, glad you're... what am I doing? What did I do? How did I live? We daily deny ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We die to self. We daily follow Him as our example. We daily become more like Him so that when He comes, we're not ashamed.
Oh, yeah.
1 John 3, 2 and 3, a little bit further. In 1 John, beloved, we are God's children now. Okay? We are God's children now. And what we will be has not yet appeared, but we know that when He appears, we will be like Him. We shall be like Him, because we shall see Him as He is, and everyone who thus hopes in Him purifies himself as he is pure. We're going to become like Him, and we're in that process now. Does that mean we're going to become gods?
No.
What are we going to become? We're going to become more human. How many of us sometimes say, well, I'm only human? You know what? I've got bad news for you. You're not human. I'm not human. We're actually a little less than human.
Come on now. Come on now.
Adam and Eve before the fall were perfectly human. Jesus was perfectly human.
Mm-hmm.
We're all a little less than human.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be like He is in His humanity. It was going to be a restored humanity because we're going to be free from sin.
Mm-hmm.
You hear what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Now, just freak somebody out next time you make a mistake, and instead of saying, I'm only human, say, hey, I'm only less than human. Because one of these days I'll be like Him.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll be a human like I was intended to be originally, and like I'm going to be. And I don't want to be ashamed when He shows up. And say, Lord, I know You saved me by grace through faith, but, you know, don't we want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant?
Oh, yeah.
No, salvation is not by works.
Mm-hmm.
It's not by works. The works are important. They're important because they're part of our growth, and they're part of glorifying Him. They're part of pointing people to the Father. It's there. Okay? So, these words about denying yourself, about taking up your cross daily, they follow the words Jesus just spoke about His own upcoming sacrifice. They precede the words Jesus spoke about His second coming. Now let's talk about this core, this essence of discipleship. Go back to verse 23. And He said to all, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross daily, and follow me. Let's break that down a little bit. Number one here. If anyone would come after me. If. Now that if there doesn't mean if you want to or don't want to. You kind of have a choice. Yeah, whatever, if. You know, it's not an if in that sense. In the original language, this has a technical term and all that, but what it means, it basically carries with it a command. It's implied reality. For example, if you've had children, you probably have said something to your children, or remember Mom and Dad, they probably said to you at some point, if you're my child, you're going to behave in church.
That's right. That's right.
If you're my child, you're going to obey the teacher and get good grades in school. Now, did that if mean, you know, I'm not sure you are not my child. Maybe you can be or cannot be my child. What was that if? That if you could have actually said, since you are my child. Because you are my child.
Say that.
Because, in other words, it is a fact, and therefore, you have no choice. When Satan tempted Jesus, if you're the Son of God, well, did Satan have any doubt whether He was the Son of God? No. What he was saying is, because you're the Son of God, since you're so the same thing here. If anyone would come after me, meaning, come after me, follow me. If you're my child, if you believe in me, you have no choice but to be my follower. And if you're my disciple, since you're my disciple, because you're my disciple, follow me, come after me. It assumes the facts. It implies a command. This statement of fact that Jesus is making here is grounded in what He just said He had done, sacrificed, and what He's going to do. Suffer many things and be rejected, and come back again. Bottom line, His sacrifice on the cross compels, requires, demands our daily sacrifice.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Just as He set aside His glory denied himself, so we do if we are to be his disciples. You know, discipleship, sometimes pastors struggle with this. We all struggle with it. Discipleship, sometimes we identify it with knowledge. Is there anything wrong with knowledge?
No.
No. We need to know more.
Yes, sir.
Discipleship, we're going to have a Bible study. Discipleship, we're going to study a book, you know, a Bible study book. Discipleship, you need to memorize this. All that's good. But let me tell you what your problem is.
Tell me.
I'm going to tell you what my problem is. So you're not offended. Let me tell you what my problem is. I really don't need to know more. I just need to obey. How many of you need to know more? Well, we all need to know more, but how many of us really know enough? We just need to obey.
That's right. Oh, yes.
This whole discipleship thing, denying yourself, he didn't say, if you want to be my disciple, go to Lifeway, go online and order a bunch of books and commentaries. Nothing wrong with any of that. I've got a bunch of them. I love to read. But what I'm usually faced with when I study the Bible, when I read this kind of stuff, is, okay, now you know that. Right, Pastor? Now what? What are you going to do with it? Well, I think I'll study a little more. We'll take it under advisement. We'll send it to committee. No. Now you know, do something with it.
Amen. That's
Do
right.
something about it.
That's
And when
right.
you do that, then I'll bring you something else to know. So you can do some more. Some of you might be a little frustrated thinking, you know, I just don't feel close to the Lord. I don't feel like I'm walking with the Lord. And I don't feel like I know enough. And I feel frustrated. Do what you've been told to do.
That's right. That's right.
Act upon what you already know. Say yes to God where you are.
Yes, sir.
And guess what He'll do? He'll reveal Himself a little bit more. He'll give you a little bit more. That principle of if you're faithful in little things, you'll be faithful in big. Well, I'll wait till there's something really big and impacting. I want a title. I want a position. I want to be recognized. Do what's right in front of you. What you already know to do. What you've been called to do. And then you take care of the rest.
Oh, yes.
That wasn't in my sermon. I just thought I'd throw it out there.
Amen.
But it
Amen.
applies.
Amen.
It applies, and it applies to me. It applies to your pastor. It applies to one of you. Whoever, if you became a Christian last week, do what you know, because God's already given you enough to know. We know enough. Some of us know too much. We just need to obey. And I'm talking to myself. Well, he said, if anyone wants to come after me, then number 2, he says, deny himself. And unless anybody feels left out, deny herself. Now there's 2 key aspects to denying oneself. First, related to our salvation. See, salvation, sometimes there's nothing as simple as getting saved. But it's not simplistic. It's not, it's free, but it's not cheap. It's easy, but it's still demanding. Nothing difficult about it. But it's not just believing and receiving and accepting. We do that. But it also involves self-denial. Denial of self-salvation. What you're saying when you come to Christ is, I can't do it. I'm giving up. Church can't do it. Pastor can't do it. Mom and Dad can't do it. My good works can't do it. Giving my money can't do it. The Pope can't do it. Southern Baptist Convention can't do it. Nobody can do it. It's denying myself in all those efforts. That's involved in salvation. We don't always usually put it that way, but that's what it is. You come to a point of saying, I give up. Isn't that what salvation is, Pastor? You come to a point where you're right here or at the kitchen table or in the pastor's office, and basically what you say is, I give up. I can't do it. So it involves that self-denial. It involves giving up self-effort and self-righteousness. It involves saying, I am a good person, but it isn't good enough. I'm the best person I know, but guess what? Not good enough. I worked hard in the church. I've worked hard at doing good things, but it's not good enough. I give up my life, bottom line, for His. Galatians 2:20, some of you know this by memory. I have been crucified with Christ, and it is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds a little bit like some self-denial there, doesn't it? It's not me anymore. It's Him. It's Him. So first of all, there's that self-denial related to salvation. Then there's this issue of discipleship, or sometimes we say it, sanctification of the Christian life, of imitating, of following after, of copying, of being like Jesus. And here I must decide to deny myself in favor of Christ and others.
Oh, yeah.
Does the rest of the New Testament have anything to say about this self-denial? Is it just this one verse in Luke? Well, it's full of it. Romans 12:2 talks about being transformed. You know, being transformed in your mind implies the idea of giving it up, denying my needs and wants, and changing completely. Ephesians 4:20 through 24. Just one of many. But that's not the way you learn Christ. Assuming that you've heard about Him and were taught in Him as the truth is in Jesus, to put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life and is corrupt through deceitful desires, and to be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and to put on the new self, created after the likeness of God in true righteousness and holiness. Now, there's a balance we've got to maintain. Salvation is of God, and it's God's, it's God's choosing us, it's God saving us, it's in us. The Christian life is the Spirit, walking in the Spirit. It's of God. But it involves a response. We have to respond to Him. And there is an element of choice. It's not, and remember Paul told the Galatians, you were saved by grace through faith. What do you think you're going to do? Complete it on your own? No, you don't add stuff. But there is, right there, where I just read in Ephesians, here's the idea of, I got to put off, and I got to put on. So I got to respond. It's God's work in me, but I'm not passive. I don't just wait. It's God's work in me, but I've got to respond. I've got to choose. I've got to decide. I've got to deny myself daily. Look, I came to the conclusion that denial of self is the core of discipleship. By reading the entire New Testament, I took 75 pages of notes. It's there. It's there, through and through. How strong is that word, deny oneself, that's used here in this passage in Luke? One commentator put it this way. He said the word is so strong that it means to forget that you exist. To cease to consider your own interest in the slightest degree. I told you this is going to be hard. It's going to be hard. You want to follow after me? Take up your cross. Deny yourself. Number 3, take up the cross daily. Take up the cross daily. See, it's not one and done. You don't just take it up once and that's it. It's not just like, I took it up at salvation and it's over. This is a constant discipleship activity. It's not that I take up my cross today and the effect of that decision carries on for good. The idea of the language here, and your pastor knows this, in the original Greek language, it's a little bit different than in English. Sometimes there's an action in the way it says, okay, you do this, and you do it once because the effects, the results of that carry on. But then there's also another way to say it in the language in Greek is, you do it for now, and then you do it again, and then you do it again. And this idea of denying yourself, taking up your cross, take up your cross, the idea is not you take it up and it's good enough for the rest of your life.
Come on now, come
and
on
you
now.
take it up, and then you take it up, and then you take it up, and then you take it up. It's daily. It's constant, as needed. That old self That flesh rears its ugly head all the time. When you least expect it. Now, taking up your cross, let me tell you what it is not. How many of you have heard? I won't ask you how many have said. How many of you have heard? Oh, we all have our crosses to bear. Yeah, it's not talking about. And usually when we say we all have our cross to bear, oh, that rebellious child, you know, my obnoxious spouse, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, my son-in-law, my daughter-in-law, my boss, my hip pain, you know, my financial difficulties, my health issue. It is not related to health, finances, people burden, disappointments, difficulty in life. Those are real. But those are not the cross you bear. Those are the thorns in life.
Come on now.
That's what Paul was talking about in 2 Corinthians 12 when he said, I had this thorn in my flesh and I asked God to remove it. And God said, no, I'm not going to, because you need to learn that my grace is sufficient for you.
That's right. That's right.
So all that stuff is not your cross to bear. That's the thorns in the flesh.
Come on now.
And they're for your own good. They're for your own edification. They're for your witness. Your cross to bear is killing yourself. Not literally. Your flesh. It's your flesh. See the difference?
Oh, yeah.
We all have our cross to bear, yes, which means every day I crucify myself. I deny myself. Now, for the first century, the cross, the symbol of the cross, was a symbol of shame. It was humiliation. See, we kind of, brother, you got a cross right there. Now, we all know what you mean by that. But in the first century, that would have been shame, humiliation, because only condemned, despicable, criminal people hung on a cross. Updated a little bit throughout history. It was an instrument of death. It was an instrument, a symbol of shame and guilt and suffering. It implies dying and being crucified. Some could have said at one point in history, take up your guillotine. Some could have said, take up your scaffolding, your noose, because they used to hang people as death penalty. Some could have said, get your firing squad, stand up against the wall, because that's how they kill people. Electric chair, gas chamber, lethal injection. See, all that's a little more awkward and uncomfortable than, that's what the cross meant in the first century. Take up your form of execution and put it into practice. You know, I mean, it sounds crass, but what Paul's saying is, shoot yourself, hang yourself, chop off your head, get in that electric chair, kill that self. Oh, now that doesn't sound quite so romantic, does it? Because it's meaning, it's a symbol, it's an instrument of death. It is suffering with and for the sake of Jesus. And then he says, number 4, follow me. If you want to be my disciple, come after me, take up your cross, deny yourself, follow me. You want to follow me? You want to follow me, Jesus says? Hold on, before you get too excited. Let me tell you what it means. Denying yourself, taking up the cross, now follow me, and keep following me. Keep doing the same thing over and over, day after day. And all the people said amen. But now we're going to apply it. We've already applied it a little bit. I've already stepped on a few toes. Believe you me, I step on mine a lot. The Lord steps on mine regularly. You start thinking about self-denial. You start thinking about the flesh. You start thinking, I've got things under control. And the Lord goes, oh yeah? You know, maybe it's not too obvious what you don't have under control. Maybe nobody else knows about it. But guess what? The Holy Spirit does. And he starts pointing out that pride, that envy, that self-pity. Well, why doesn't anybody pay attention to me? Well, why can't I get my way? Maybe I need to die to myself. What would it look like today? What could it look like for you? Now, we could make a long list, but I'm just going to throw out a few things here. And some of them apply to me more than they do you. I don't want to tell you which ones. I'll let you pick it out. But how about, let's just make it real practical. How about putting my spouse's needs well before my own? Yeah, but you don't know my husband or my wife. That may be a counseling issue. I'm not talking about counseling right now. I'm talking about a biblical issue. And that's the question. It's not that there's not issues, not that there shouldn't be counseling. But Lord, how can I put my wife first today? How can I put my husband first? Well, he didn't deserve it. She didn't deserve it. I didn't ask it. They did. How can I kill myself? Kill my flesh? Maybe it means that I don't always have to be right. And in today's social media debates, everybody wants to be right. Everybody wants to have the last word. Maybe I just need to be quiet. Maybe I don't have to win every argument. Maybe I really don't even need to express my opinion. Now, it's a free country. You can express all the opinions you want. But I heard one time that opinions are kind of like armpits. Everybody got a couple of them. They don't think they're stink.
2 of them.
Yeah, at least 2 of them, maybe more. I got a lot of opinions. And I like to express a lot of them sometimes. But sometimes I just need to realize, it doesn't matter. I don't have to be right. Especially when I'm wrong. I don't have to give my opinion. I don't have to get involved in all of that. Maybe I need to be willing to let another church member have a say-so without me feeling like I need to correct them. Or disagree. Or one-up them. We're getting a spiritual one-upmanship. Sometimes we do that prayer request, don't we? Maybe I just need to be willing to overlook more slights, offenses, and insults. I'm amazed sometimes. Now, I'm talking about us individually, personally. You heard me last week. There is injustice in this world.
Oh, yeah.
There is stuff that needs to be dealt with. But 99% of the time, and I think this is a rule of thumb, I need to be concerned about how you're being oppressed and offended and insulted. I need to fight for your rights and your justice. But I need to be willing to give up mine a little bit more. Am I concerned about me or am I concerned about you? Does that make sense? Biblically, I need to be willing to give up some of my rights.
Oh, yeah.
Biblically, you offend me, why can't I just let it go?
It's hard.
Yeah, you bet. Now, it becomes a pattern. It becomes vocal, becomes public. It might be a church discipline issue. Maybe you have to sit down in the family and deal with it. Not saying you just let things go into a toxic, dysfunctional. No, I'm not saying that. But it doesn't mean that every single time someone steps on my toes a little bit, I got to make a big deal out of it.
Come on, man.
Well, I've been in a work situation. Well, they offended me. Yeah, they did. So what? You're going to live. Now, if they keep doing it, we'll come back and address it. Maybe they had a bad day. Maybe they've got a headache. Maybe they're struggling with some health issues. You're right, they offended you. They slighted you. They insulted you a little bit. But maybe for Christ's sake and for the love that we're supposed to have for each other, we can just kind of brush it off and let it go. But that means I have to deny myself. Yeah. Sister, you're right. It's hard. It's hard. The language is hard. The language here. I mean, Jesus didn't say, oh, no big deal. Y'all come on. Easy going. Easy peasy. Take up your cross. Deny yourself. I mean, just the words. This is not going to be easy. Maybe I just need to let somebody else get the credit for work, for ideas. But it was my idea. Yeah, you're right, it was. But that's okay. It's amazing how much work can get done, how much ministry can get done, and we don't care who gets the credit for it. Now, I got all these down perfectly? And that self rears its ugly head. But. But I deserve, I should have, I should be able to.
Mm-hmm.
And from our good old American way of life, yep, yes. And I'm glad for all those things. But from our following Jesus, taking up your cross, denying self, sometimes I need to be, I'm going to fight for Brother Francis' rights. But I need to give up some money. I'm not asking you to agree. I'm asking you to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
It may be tough. I'm talking about me as an individual. I'm going to fight for your rights. And I'm going to fight for justice for others. But I got to turn my other cheek. I got to turn my cheek. I got to be willing to give it up. Anyway, good friend of mine. One time I heard him preaching. Richard Taylor. You know Richard. Has Richard ever preached? You need to get Richard here someday. He was doing chapel one time at the convention. He said, you know, he said, we all like to talk about servanthood. We like to talk about servant leadership and being a servant. We're servants and we're going to serve each other and wash each other's feet. We all love servanthood. And we all like servant leadership. And we're all about servanthood until someone treats us like a servant.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can't talk to me like that. You can't treat me. I thought you were a servant. Anybody? Yeah, we're all about servanthood until someone treats us like a servant. Now, I'm not saying we should treat people like servants, but you get the point.
Oh, yes.
You don't like it. I'm all for you being a servant. I'm not sure I want to be one. Kind of like I'm all for changing, but I don't want to change. I want you to change. Well, here's the challenge, and I'll close with this, Pastor, and give it back to you. This is a challenge I got to have every day. Look in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Say, how do I die today to myself? How do I deny myself? How do I put you first, Lord?
Mm-hmm.
How do I put others first? If you ask that question and you really mean it, watch out. Because the Lord will point out some things to you, black and white, clear as a bell. Clear as a bell. And you say, well, Lord, I need to know more. No, you don't. You just need to obey.
Mm-hmm.
And then He'll take you to the next thing, and then the next thing. Let's pray. Lord, thank you so much.